Dave Chappelle said in his latest stand-up that the only way gun laws would change is if every African American registered for a legal gun permit. Do you agree? Why or why not? One of the pro-gun selling points is that gun control is systemically racist. It would be subverted, at least on paper. I've been around enough gun people to know that some are hardcore racist, some are very liberal and believe in owning a gun, and many others just want to be left alone and don't give a shit what anyone else does. I personally think law-abiding citizens being legally armed in high-crime areas would have a beneficial effect on the communities. It's not like the insanely restrictive laws there are doing much good. That's assuming that pro-gun people are racist, which is far from reality. I think the idea is that it's not necessarily meant to mean gun owners are racists, but racists that aren't necessarily pro or anti-gun would develop an opinion as a result of this push. I disagree. I am a Hispanic gun owner and I wholeheartedly support any legal adult exercising their Second Amendment rights. Hardly. Many of us gun owners actively promote minority ownership of guns. It's one of the few demographics that is ripe for increasing the number of gun owners, not just the number of guns owned. It doesn't matter if some white guy has 100 guns. He only gets one vote. So it's vitally important to increase the number of gun owners. Also, there is a common pattern. A man of any color gets a gun and within a year he'll have a few more. Once a person is bitten by the bug, particularly men, they love to collect guns. People who own multiple guns are great at spreading the message of how great gun ownership is. So, if you can get a man of any color to buy just one gun, odds are you'll have a disciple spreading the word in a year or two. Anyone talking about past events is so fixated on ancient history that they're blind to the realities of today. Go to any gun range in any city. Odds are you'll find a whole rainbow of people shooting guns together and having a great time with each other. Gun owners want more gun owners, the color is irrelevant. Of course, I couldn't speak to hypocritical people on the other side who, while proclaiming themselves to be free of racism, might get their panties in a bunch and move even harder for gun control if some other group also started buying guns. They're motivated by fear, not reality. The gun bug is very real. I went 23 years without shooting a gun. My buddy had a bachelor party at another buddy's 300-acre farm and we shot guns. First time I ever shot. Yep. Fell in love. Bought my first gun about a month later after going to the range a bunch of times and using rental guns to see what I liked. Bought my M&P 9mm. Shot it a bunch. Decided I wanted an R, bought my M&P 15, 5.56. Put some money into that. Decided I was comfortable enough to conceal and carry and got my permit, then bought my M&P Shield .40. This was about 5 years ago. I'm still on the same 3 guns but in the market for a shotgun for a little 3-gun as I already compete in long-range shooting competitions. But you're right. I go to the range and it's just a bunch of people sharing a hobby. Just a couple months ago, brought my girlfriend shooting for the first time and taught her how to shoot. In the meantime, a guy in the lane next to me had a wicked shotgun. He saw me watching and offered to let me shoot it. He shot my R a few times and I shot his shotgun a few times. I'm white, he was black. Didn't matter. Just 2 gun lovers having fun. But it does suck. I'm a Republican, so I'm told every day I'm a racist, bigot, literally Hitler, etc. So I guess I can't enjoy being around a fellow gun person because he's black. It's a shame because we had fun for 30 minutes. Damn me and my racism. /S. Hey man. I'm sorry that our politics has become so polarizing. As a Democrat, Marine Corps vet and a gun owner, I hate that just because you have some opposing viewpoints that you feel vilified by the other side. I feel it too. My own father questions me on my patriotism because of the perceived dichotomy. Regardless, people can, and should, have differing opinions about how our country should operate. Both sides need to listen to the other and forge a path forward. TL Doctor, let's go shooting. Then grill some steaks, drink some delicious California wine, and try to make this country better than it already is. Maybe so. Gun control laws started to oppress other races including the natives and recently freed slaves. Gun control has always been an oppressive force. In fact, of all the Jim Crow laws, for some reason the gun control ones are some of the few left standing. Would wholly support every law-abiding African American citizen owning a gun. You can't support the 2A without. Walk into any gun range and see how any POC is treated, even if they look like a thug. You know what kind of treatment they get? As long as they respect the weapons, the same respect that a range junkie gets. Help, care, attention, when needed, and space, when attention isn't needed. That's been my experience anytime I've been shooting at a private club, at a public range, or on state land. And NBSP, edit, it has been privately brought to my attention that the term thug might offend some as it applies people of color. Please be aware that in this context, I am referring specifically to anyone who looks like they might be out to cause trouble, regardless of race, and that it is most often applied anecdotally to young white men. Gun nuts are really just excited to see gun nuts. If you can go in and talk competently about your latest build, you're going to have a good time, meaning that racists would be so scared of an armed black populace they'd want to ban guns outright. Considering that one of the traits of the cliché racist archetype being alluded to here is that they already think that black people are armed to the teeth illegally, I think it's safe to say no. I personally want every single black man and woman to buy a gun and get their CCW if possible. Minority gun ownership is good for the community and nation as a whole. Americans don't need permits. Free men don't ask permission. They'd change, but not in the direction you think. If you could get 14% of the population, a portion that votes almost entirely liberal, to be pro-gun, we'd end up with much less restrictive gun laws. As a white 2A supporting conservative, I hope that all AAs that want to legally own a firearm do, or any other ace for that matter. There are no gun permits to register for though. Just background checks. We want to keep it that way. Edit, registration is the government permitting us as a law-abiding citizen to own a firearm. As a law-abiding citizen, I should require no permission for self-preservation by means of my right to bear arms. Not at all. I'm a major supporter of the Second Amendment and would be glad to see people of all races and sexes owning firearms and being able to defend themselves. There is no such thing as a legal gun permit in the US. There are concealed carry permits, however. Never move to New York City, then. You need a permit for anything. A permit that needs, at least back when I was a resident in the early 1990s, to be renewed every 3 years. Missed getting the paperwork in on time one cycle, and the NYPD, who apparently had nothing better to do during the crime-ridden Dinkins administration, showed up at my door to confiscate my .22 caliber bolt-action target rifle. Or Illinois. No, green is stronger than white or black. I have definitely seen POCs show up to gun ranges looking like they are ready for the revolution, and the managers blink, then charge them and wave them in like anyone else. You know who does get massive side-eye? Asian tourists who show up. For some reason that remains unknown to me, East Asians, not North American Asians, treat firearms like toys by default. RSOs will finagle a way for them to not be in there, or in some places will wire rental guns in such a way that you can only point them down range. Almost got killed by some Asian tourists at the range a couple trips ago. Kept waving a loaded rifle around outside the booth. Finally got kicked out after rapid firing a .45 Glock so out of control that they shot the ceiling multiple times. No, I don't agree. He's a comedian, it was a joke. Had this been 20 or so years ago, maybe. Now? No, I don't think it would affect it at all. Lazy take is lazy. Second Amendment supporters consider anyone exercising and caring about their rights to be a win. I would agree. Firearm sales go up, probably ammo sales go up, more gun owners, probably more concealed carriers. I would venture to imagine that the NRA would get more donations, either from people, or firearm companies. 2A supporters wouldn't see a downside. You people have a rather skewed view of gun owners. I and every gun owner I know is all for anyone being armed so long as they educate themselves and use them safely. And they certainly wouldn't want to give up their constitutional right because someone of a different color than them decided to purchase guns. So good to see fellow gun rights people sounding off on this. Honestly, most of the gun owners I know would probably celebrate this. The inverse of this point, that blacks would be better off armed, is sort of an NRA talking point now. Greater than honestly most of the gun owners I know would probably celebrate this. I know I would. I think it would be outstanding. There's precedent for this in the US. In California during the Reagan governorship there was a concerted effort by the African American community in the Bay Area, at least, to arm themselves. As such, Reagan championed and signed into law the restrictive gun laws that California now has. Yup, the Mulford Act. As a side note, I found this tidbit about the Mulford Act hilarious. Greater than Governor Ronald Reagan later commented that he saw no reason why on the street today a citizen should be carrying loaded weapons and that guns were a ridiculous way to solve problems that have to be solved among people of goodwill. Boy, how times have changed. I don't know the context, but I'm assuming the idea is banking on some sort of racism to force gun law changes, right? If people are all going through the proper and legal channels to get a permit and a gun, it seems like a good idea to me. It's a historical reference. His joke scenario actually happened in the 60s. https://n.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/mulford_act that said, "I'm glad that the joke seems to be falling flat from irrelevance just 50 or so years later. You guys are better gun owners than they were lawmakers." To a supporter, background checked and fingerprinted gun owner here. I would encourage all Americans who have the desire, capacity and possess the discernment and ability to bear the responsibility of firearm ownership to exercise their rights in accordance with the law. Our rights are not limited by any immutable characteristics. I think it would make it harder to pass new gun regulations. I don't imagine all the black people in America would be too keen on having their newly exercised rights, and newly purchased firearms, taken away. That doesn't sound like a bad thing to me. It's not. I love it when people exercise their rights. 100% agree. The last time major gun laws were enacted was in response to the Black Panthers exercising their Second Amendment rights, meaning they formed their own well-regulated militia. They did this of course to protect their own communities. As a conservative, NRA member and gun owner, I would welcome this. No, because many African Americans already have a gun permit. A fundamental misunderstanding of pro-gun people is that they are white racists. I live in suburban Detroit and know that this is not the case. Not only are gun owners a diverse group, but they're also typically pretty nice, welcoming people. I think increased African American gun ownership would be a great thing. It would just be another thing over which people could bond through shared interest. It's not the lawful gun owners who are going around shooting people, and in fact lawful gun owners are statistically speaking one of the most law-abiding demographics in the country, even more so than police officers. Training classes and CPL/CCW courses give people a sense of the respect and purpose for owning firearms. I would highly recommend taking a class, even if you're not interested in ownership/carrying. It's nonsense. I'm a black man and I started the sub r/2 liberals and the offshoot podcast 2A Liberal podcast. I've been into firearms my entire life and have been treated with nothing but respect and open arms by the gun community at large. It's an absolute myth that pro-gun people support restrictions when black people get involved. I'm a black guy and every time I go to a new gun shop I prepare my mind for someone to treat me weird every time. Every time I am proven wrong. Many people on this thread seem to be assuming Dave Chappelle is saying gun owners or the general populace who support Second Amendment are racist, but that's not what he's saying. He's saying the people in power, government officials, senators etc. are racist and likely would not support black people arming themselves. Whether it's true or not is another thing, but he's not saying Bob down the street will suddenly change his mind about gun laws if he sees his black neighbor buy one. Boggles my mind at how many people seemed to misunderstand that.